What's up guys, it's Subsy here and this is a video about the OnePlus Nord's camera system. Now if we go back down to basics and try and think what a budget phone, which this is meant to be, and what a budget phone's recipe is meant to be, what you normally do is you take away as many components as you can that are redundant or are not important at this price range to bring the cost down, and you try to bring in as many of the top end features that you can to that price range to make it more appealing and make people want to buy the product. So that makes this more confusing for me why they've done this camera system in a budget phone, because this is meant to be under £400. I think it's £380, a tiny bit more than the Pixel 4a, which just came out recently, or is going to be released in the UK soon. It makes it more confusing for me for why they have the macro camera at the back. That is just, well, to put it simply, never use it. You should never want to use it because there's nothing good about it, simply put. But I'll get to that properly in a second. Let me just first talk about the other cameras on the phone because it's not all bad. It's just it's not a flagship level camera like they say, just because they've taken off their OnePlus 8, and the OnePlus 8 itself is not a flagship level camera. That's more of a mid-range camera system, and it's more so that they can say that they have 6 cameras on a budget phone. It just makes it sound good, but doesn't mean it is good, and just FYI, it's not good. That's not to say that it's all bad. So if we take the normal camera to start off with, it takes pretty good shots, so it's got good dynamic range, the colours are fairly accurate. Sometimes the photos seem a bit purple to me indoors, but that can probably be fixed by a software update in the future. But overall the main sensor has been good, and here are some photos from there just so you can see. And of course it's not the same level as an iPhone camera or a Pixel camera or even an S20 camera, but it's not bad. And especially for less than £400 you're not going to be complaining about the main camera on this. Just FYI, this is running the latest update, so I waited to make this video because there was an update that came out. Now that update was targeted towards fixing some issues with the macro camera, but I was hoping it would fix some of the other ones that I have as well. And then the ultra wide camera, well, this is okay. The colours shift a tiny bit, but for me indoors the purple tint got a bit worse for the ultra wide camera, especially when looking at blue colours, especially deep blues. The actual focus on the ultra wide was quite good, but the sort of softness of the photo was a lot more softer. It just didn't have the clarity and the sharpness that the normal had for me, but that's probably just down to the sensor that's being used. So just to illustrate what I've been saying over the past minute or two, here are some photos that I took in the same conditions within 10 seconds of each other, so the lighting is the same, the colours should be the same, but they're not. And you can sort of see where the ultra wide, especially around the edges, is softer and the center isn't as sharp even if you zoom into 100%. It's just not as good as the normal, which is okay because with an ultra wide you're probably just going to shoot it, post it to Instagram or something like that, but you just can't get the clarity that you get with the normal camera, so don't expect them all to be great. And then we come to the two front-facing cameras. Now the normal camera is great, it's actually quite good for a selfie camera, especially coming from the Pixel 2, which I still use day to day. They're really good. They're good. Everything seems sharp, the colours are fairly accurate, and there's not much distortion around the edges, which is good. The ultra wide selfie is a nice to have, and that's actually probably one of the cameras that I do like that they included. But the issue with these cameras, all of them, is that you can't actually use them. Now let me clarify what I mean by that. You can use that in the OnePlus camera app, but you can't have access to them in any other app. At least I haven't been able to. And if you're buying this phone, you're probably into social media, you probably like Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok or whatever. You can't use anything apart from the main camera in Snapchat. So I could never use any ultra wide camera in Snapchat. It just made me not use the cameras, and that was pretty pointless because if I'm buying this phone for the cameras, especially the front cameras, and I'm using Snapchat, I'd want to use the ultra wide Snapchat camera. It doesn't exist. You can only take a photo in the normal app and then upload it to Snapchat, which isn't great. Same with Instagram for me, and I'm assuming the other apps. Now after looking into this, it could be because OnePlus has actually locked those cameras down, so apps can't actually see that they exist and they can't access the cameras. And it sort of makes this pointless because I feel like most people buying this phone are going to want to use one of the other cameras in a social media app but not be able to. Yeah, I'm not sure why they've done that. I'm not sure if it's specific to this. I'm pretty sure it's to all OnePlus phones and some other brands as well. But I know in some you can have access to it, just not in this. So when you think about it, you can only use one of the cameras on each side for those apps, and if you're buying a phone to use the cameras within those apps, you're probably better off using the same amount of money to spend on a Pixel 4a, which has better cameras on both sides. And well, when it comes to some apps, they actually perform better on Pixel phones and Samsung phones than other brands. So Snapchat, especially, the pictures that come out of this are flat. They just lack the dynamic range. Everything just sort of looks like it's been, like shadows have been pulled up and the highlights have been pulled down. Everything seems flat, and I don't know why that is. Maybe they're not using the camera API. Not entirely sure why that is. And now we come on to the best bit of this, the macro camera. Now, this confuses me because it's bad enough in my opinion that they put the other sensors on them in a budget phone where they should be trying to save money and bring the price down and put more other features in, or they could have made the main sensor a bit better. They put a macro camera in this, which, one thing, it doesn't take good pictures, second thing, it doesn't focus well, third thing, it's got crap color. Everything is weird. So as soon as you switch in the camera app to the macro camera, you see a massive shift in color balance. Everything goes warmer, and they said they fixed this in the camera update. It hasn't been fixed. It's been tweaked slightly, but it's still a lot warmer than it should be, especially compared to the others. So as soon as you switch cameras to that in your camera app, you see a massive shift in color, and that's not enjoyable because all of the pictures that come out of this or that camera are terrible. It just doesn't focus well, especially on objects that are metallic. For me, they haven't been able to focus with the macro camera, and if you try and take the same picture, same distance with the normal camera, it's normally sharper. Everything's better. The color, the dynamic range, everything is a lot better with the normal camera. So I can't think of any single use case where the macro camera, where I've tried to test it as a macro camera, has actually worked to do what it's meant to do. That's what confuses me, why they put that in there instead of, saving that money and not putting it in there and having a smaller camera bump, or spending a bit more on a better sensor for the ultra wide or something like that. It just seems like they just shifted the entire module from the OnePlus 8, put it into this, and just thought, we've got a flagship camera. Even though it makes it worse, because if they never included it, then we wouldn't have any major complaints about the camera system in this. It just makes the whole thing seem a bit pointless. Now, when we compare this to the phone that I was using before, which is the Pixel 2 XL, this only has one camera at the front and the back, and the camera on this, or at least the sensor on this, wasn't the best when it came out. But the thing that Pixels love to do, and that they do really well, is great image processing, and that normally happens within the Google Camera app, which you can install on other phones, and I'll get to that in a second. So this phone still takes really good pictures, and it still outperforms the main camera in the normal app, and this is what, 3 years old now, so really good pixel. If we try to install the Google Camera app on this, without any tweaks, the main camera works well, and it takes pictures as good as this, if not a tiny bit better. So that's really good. And same with the front camera, it does portrait photos really well, just because it's got the same sort of image processing for background blur and everything like that going on. So that's fine, but the issue comes with the other cameras, because again, the Google Camera app doesn't have access to those cameras. You can root it and do something with it, and there is one of the Google Camera APKs which I found, which it does allow access to 2 of the other cameras, but that keeps crashing, and that just brings up a major issue for me. If you buy this phone with the hope that you can use the Google Camera app to get good image processing with those lenses, don't. Because even if it does work, it doesn't mean it's going to work. Like, if something gets updated, if your OnePlus Oxygen OS gets updated, or if the Google Camera app gets updated, it could stop working. So only base your camera decision on this based on the normal camera. Don't base it on the Google Camera app, unless you just don't care about the other lenses, in which case, again, you probably don't need to focus on the cameras for this phone anyway. So if you did want to buy a budget phone for cameras, it's really hard for me to recommend that, especially when there is the Pixel 4a, which has amazing photos and it's cheaper than this. The only issue is if you want the ultra wide, you can't have an ultra wide camera in this. But that's sort of the trade-off you're looking for between these two. Do you want the ultra wide cameras, or do you just want a really good camera sensor with really good image processing? And I keep getting notifications on this. What do you want? Like, what's important to you? Because for me, at least, I'd rather have one really good camera than one good-ish camera and two mediocre and one bad camera at the back. Like, there's just no point for that for me. It's just a waste of money, and I feel like it was just a marketing thing where they could say they've got 6 cameras and it's a flagship camera system. Which, I mean, they've got 6 cameras, it's not a flagship camera system, and I'd say only 3 of them are good. But anyway, that's been pretty much it for the cameras on this. Now, I'm not a massive person to, go out and take pictures with my phone all the time, but I do care about a good camera. And the reason I bought the Pixel back in the day was because of the camera. That's why I chose this over any other phone. It's because, the Pixel camera is great and you can't get away from that. The issue I have here is the focus is on specs that they can put on a spec website. The focus isn't actually on the experience, and that's an issue I'm having more and more with OnePlus right now. It feels like everything is for a list of specs which they can put to the marketing team and push out to the customers. But when you get your hands on the phone, you feel like they probably shouldn't have done that, and this doesn't matter, that doesn't matter. Everything else I'll be covering in a proper review. I'll do a comparison between the OnePlus Nord and my old Pixel 2 XL, seeing which one I actually prefer, and is it worth getting this if you have a Pixel 2 XL, or is it worth holding out for the Pixel 5, which is supposed to come out in a few months or maybe 2 months, or if you don't care about the size and you want a smaller phone, getting the Pixel 4a. But as always, it's been Subsy here, and I'll see you guys next time.